Decus spheres. In recent years, archaeologists have uncovered strange spheres made out of stone across the Decus Delta in southern Costa Rica. Thanks in large part to University of Kansas academic John Hoops, these 6 sites have now been named as UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Known by locals as Los Bolas, or the Balls, these puzzling spheres date from 600 to 1000 AD. The nature of these stones is unclear. While incredibly smooth, their size is perhaps their most striking feature. They range from just a couple inches to around 7.5 feet in diameter, and the heaviest among the stones weighs more than 30,000 pounds. There are more than 300 spheres in the Decus Delta, and almost all are constructed out of gabbro, which is a kind of rock made with magma. Some of these spheres have images carved into their surfaces. However, these images haven't helped researchers discover all that much. Even after a lot of evaluation, some think that the stones were used for astronomical purposes, and because their creators were demolished after the Spanish conquest, the stones' actual purpose will likely stay forever hidden. Shroud of Turin. One of the most mysterious artifacts in the world is the Shroud of Turin, but it's only one piece of a larger puzzle. For centuries now, people have been claiming to have found the original burial cloth of Jesus Christ. For a long time, many people thought it was the Shroud of Turin, which got its name because it was kept in Turin, Italy since 1578 inside the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist. However, recent forensic evidence suggests the Shroud of Turin is actually an old piece of linen cloth bearing the image of a crucified man. It is unclear who it was. The cloth first surfaced in 1354, and it's another of the possible Christ relics, which also includes the crown of thorns at the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. But there are plenty of doubts. For example, researchers used forensic techniques to dispute the bloody stains on the Shroud of Turin, saying they could not possibly have come from Jesus Christ. This had nothing to do with actually testing his blood. What researchers did was reenact Jesus' death using a mannequin to study how the blood would have dripped from the spear wound in his side and the crucifixion. The results showed that there was no possible way that blood could have stained or leaked onto his burial shroud. In any case, this is one of those mysteries nobody will ever really find out. Is the Shroud of Turin really Jesus' burial cloth? We will probably never know. Believers will say yes, and skeptics will doubt it for years to come. The Cockno Stone. Also called the Druid Stone, the object was discovered in Scotland in 1887 and is considered to be one of Europe's most important works of art. To protect it from vandals, it was buried near Clydebank at the edge of a council housing estate. The slab of rock is etched with carving from the Stone Age and dates back some 5,000 years. Measuring 42 feet by 26 feet, 13 meters by 8 meters, the stone slab is covered with grooved indentations and spirals referred to as cup and rings. Experts suggest the petroglyphs might have been used for marking hunting grounds or other territories. They might even represent a unit of measurement. Archaeologists re-exposed it a few years ago to conduct an in-depth investigation. So far, there's no definitive conclusion regarding the mystery of the stone's carvings or the prehistoric people who made them. Nazca Lines. From the ground, the Nazca Lines may not seem to be much. In fact, all the Nazca did on the ground was separate the red pebbles from the earth to reveal the differently colored dirt underneath. That is why the lines were not truly seen as something special until commercial aircraft spotted them from above in the 20s and 30s. The Nazca made these line formations more than 2,000 years ago. Archaeologists say that there are hundreds of Nazca line formations, and the things that these lines depict run the gamut from animals to fantastical creatures. Because of the size of these drawings, as well as the situations they depict, the purpose of the Nazca Lines have been a mystery ever since their discovery. How could these ancients have built something so magnificent in scope? Indeed, some have gone so far as to suggest that the lines must have been made by aliens who could evaluate the drawings from above. However, most researchers now maintain that these lines were actually pathways that the Nazca would navigate during their sacred rituals. However, given that the Nazca are gone for good, we may never know. The Disappearance of Sanhedi. Our former discoveries were uncovered either by trained archaeologists or by planes from above, but not every significant discovery requires such ornate methods for their discovery. In 1929, a Sichuan man trying to fix a sewage ditch found an enormous assortment of stone and jade artifacts. Then, in 1986, archaeologists found even more troves in the very same area which featured bronze creations and elephant tusks. Only then was the significance of the Sichuan man's original discovery understood. Where did these artifacts come from? Scientists attribute them to the ancient Sanshendui civilization. Very little is known about the Sanshendui. At some point between 2800 and 3000 years ago, they disappeared from their city next to the Minjiang River. In fact, many archaeologists think that they disbanded of their own accord. But why did they leave? And why would they fill these pits with so much treasure before going? New studies indicate that a giant earthquake may have caused landslides to dam up the Minjiang River, forcing it to run to a different place, leading the Sanshendui away in turn. While speculative, it is a better theory than flood or war. Until more evidence arises, the earthquake explanation is the best we've got. Norsen Tepe. Norsen Tepe is a fairly secret prehistoric site located in Anatolia, Turkey. But why does nobody know about this site? Why was it abandoned? And why was it destroyed? This is a super mysterious place that nobody seems to be talking about. Excavations at the site began in 1968 and continued until 1974. The excavations were led by a German archaeologist, but the fieldwork had to come to a stop in 1974 because the nearby Kaban Dam was causing the water levels to rise. Before research ended, archaeologists managed to extract many metal artifacts and smelting tools. The site appeared to be a rather large settlement that survived through the Copper Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. Unfortunately, the settlement was destroyed by fire and abandoned soon after the Iron Age, and from then it was forgotten. Today, the old city sits underwater thanks to a man-made dam. This forgotten and now underwater prehistoric site never got its full due. Could it have been intentional by the Turkish government to hide the true nature of this place? What undiscovered relics are now lost to time because the excavations were forced to stop? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Also, remember to subscribe if you haven't already. If you like exciting videos about interesting topics like these archaeological discoveries, you won't want to miss out on the new stuff. Göbekli Tepe. Here we have one of the most mysterious archaeological discoveries of all time. This amazing place was discovered in 1994 in a rural area of Turkey, and it has completely blown apart the way scientists previously viewed the evolution of civilization. If you are not super familiar with Turkey, it has for centuries been the center of the world, bridging Asia with Europe, and so it is no surprise that the world's oldest temple was discovered in the region. Göbekli Tepe is considered the oldest place of worship on Earth, and it dates all the way back to the 10th millennium BC, far older than any other permanent settlement discovered. Scientists believe those who constructed Göbekli Tepe were semi-nomadic hunters. They were likely completely unaware of agriculture, which didn't come around for another 500 years. But other than that, there is basically no information on who built the structure or why. However, scientists believe that other places of worship like Göbekli Tepe could have led to permanent settlements and evolution of civilization away from nomadic life. It is the first representation of religion and humanity that we have ever found. Chariot and Two Horses. In 2013, the complete remains of a chariot and two horses were uncovered in Bulgaria. They appeared to have been buried upright in a Thracian tomb in Svestari, northeast Bulgaria. It has been dated back 2,500 years and likely belonged to nobility. The Thracians were an Indo-European tribe that populated Central and Southeastern Europe, establishing a kingdom in the 5th century. Sadly, the horses appear to have been killed, having pulled the chariot into the tomb. This was considered after experts realized they were still harnessed to the carriage even in the tomb. A dog had also been chained to the chariot, which was a surprising discovery given the plundering of surrounding tombs. Lothagam North Pillar Site. This location in northern Kenya contains a main burial mound with stone circles, cairns, and megalithic stones flanking it. Researchers say it was built by some of the region's earliest inhabitants. Calling it a burial ground gives away the area's purpose. What you might not expect is the site's age and immensity. Dating to 3000 BC, archaeologists say this is the largest and earliest monumental cemetery in East Africa. Hundreds of individuals are thought to have been buried here over the course of 500 years. It was a planned project that spanned several generations. But it is still debated whether all of the community's members were interred there or only the elite. What is for certain is that each body was placed within a central cavity measuring about 3 feet deep, less than 1 meter. Many of them were adorned with ivory, stone beads, and other jewelry. A few individuals were found with ornaments made from hundreds of gerbil teeth. Some people might find that kinda strange. What do you think? The Edinburgh Vaults. After their construction in 1788, this series of chambers located underneath the city's south bridge went on to serve several different purposes. The vaults were originally used for workshops and storage spaces by taverns and other merchants located underneath the bridge. On a lower level, there were living quarters. After 3 decades, the vaults had fallen into extreme disrepair, and most of the businesses abandoned the chambers. But that vacuum was soon filled by the homeless people who set up camp there. The vaults became a subterranean hotspot of ill repute. Criminals ran a black market trafficking stolen goods, while gambling venues and illegal distilleries popped up. According to some stories, murderers used the vaults to hide the bodies of their victims, but living conditions became so compromised that almost every occupant was forced out of the area by the 1870s. The location was shut down and forgotten until the 1980s when they were discovered by accident. The vaults were later excavated and became linked to paranormal activity involving spirits and disembodied voices. That, along with its strange history, has made the vaults a popular tourist attraction in the 21st century. Kat Shabib. Given their lack of technology, gigantic structures built by ancients amaze us. How could they have built this, we ask? Archaeologists feel the same way about an ancient wall in Jordan that is almost 93 miles long. In fact, they have even more questions. Who built it? Why did they build it? And how? The Kat Shabib, as it is referred to today, was also discovered by plane. Sir Alec Kirkbride, a British diplomat, wrote that from the airplane he saw a stone wall running for no obvious purpose across the country. The wall is not in very good shape. Using aerial photography, researchers have been trying to figure out what its purpose could have been. There has been little progress on these questions. Along its lengths, researchers have uncovered a bunch of small towers, each only about 6 to 12 feet wide. Moreover, some of these were built only after the wall was completed. These towers could have been places to sleep, or perhaps watch posts. But more questions remain. Given the height of the tower, it probably was not used for defense. Perhaps it could have served as a boundary between communities, but really, no one is sure. In any case, its existence is sure to provoke further investigation. Chen Xi Wong. Our next entry was discovered by accident as well. Well, Chinese workers uncovered this incredible archaeological discovery while building a well in 1974. Near Xi'an, in the Shanxi province of China, these workers discovered thousands of terracotta soldiers, built to actual lifelike proportions, 3 distinct pits. Upon discovery, these pits were converted into a museum and declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The site is located less than a mile away from Chen Xi Wong, the first emperor of China's pyramidic tomb. Some suspect that this tomb might hold an entire replica of Xi'an, which this army of stone protects. Holding approximately 8,000 soldiers, archaeologists think that they were constructed to guard the emperor in the afterlife. Nor is each sculpture a carbon copy of the next. Each is designed with such incredible detail that researchers suspect them to be based on actual people. Mysteriously, the soldiers face towards land already conquered by Chen Xi Wong, and not towards lands waiting to be conquered. It is unclear why he did this, but perhaps he thought that there were threats lurking in places in which he already had some control. King Tut's tomb. King Tut's famous tomb was discovered in 1922 by a British Egyptologist named Howard Carter, and ever since the Egyptian pharaoh Tutankhamun has been a prominent figure in Egyptian lore, even though he did not have much to do with ancient Egypt's history. He was only a boy and he ruled for a very short time. Nonetheless, King Tut's tomb has more mysteries surrounding it than any other tomb of ancient Egypt. Even before the tomb was unearthed, there were tales of a pharaoh's curse, which was supposed to kill anyone who got too close to the tomb. While there are obviously no curses, there are definitely some other bizarre mysteries. Many historians believe the tomb was not actually built for the young pharaoh, but for someone entirely different. This indicates that his death was an accident and very unexpected. There are also supposed to be undiscovered mummies still buried inside the tomb. There are a lot of questions about King Tut himself and why his tomb was in such amazing condition when it was originally found. And while we can't solve all these mysteries today, we can talk about the fact that King Tut appears to have burst into flames after being mummified and sealed in his tomb. It is widely believed that his wrappings were soaked in flammable embalming oils, and after he was sealed away forever, or at least a few thousand years, the flammable embalming oils reacted with the oxygen in the air and basically cooked the king's corpse inside its sarcophagus. That's one startling and memorable way to go out, at least. Hobbits. You might be surprised to discover that the fantastic creatures known as hobbits are a bit more realistic than you think. They probably weren't as charismatic as the protagonists of the famous Lord of the Rings series, but a 2003 discovery shows that hobbits very likely did exist. This happened on the remote Indonesian island of Flores. And while scientists did not discover an actual hobbit sitting in a hobbit hole, they did discover the bones of an ancient hominin, which very closely resembles a human. The bones that they found were absolutely tiny. The skeleton was of a 30-year-old female, but she only stood 3.5 feet tall. The researchers first believed that perhaps the creature had suffered from some kind of defect, but since then more and more hobbit skeletons have been found. It appears that these tiny pre-humans were a species of their own, a totally different branch of the human family tree, and they lived, according to human origins, between 50,000 and 100,000 years ago. But there are still a lot of questions to answer. For example, where did this race of very tiny people go? Did they evolve gradually into humans? Did they go extinct? Is this the missing link between monkey and man? Science is not entirely sure, but more discoveries will help us understand our evolutionary cousins and figure out why these miniature humanoids disappeared. Ramses II. Aged more than 90 years when he died, Ramses II reigned for 6 decades and is often regarded as the most powerful pharaoh of ancient Egypt. Upon death, he was entombed in the Valley of the Kings, as was customary. It was later moved to another location to foil looters. In 1881, the mummy was found in an area known as the Royal Cache, which contained 50 other nobles and rulers. While pictures of Ramses' mummy can look pretty harsh, experts thought he was in remarkable condition. But in the 1970s, the body was deteriorating and it was flown to France for treatment. He was issued a passport for the trip, which listed his occupation as king, deceased. Rango Rango writings. Easter Island is famous for the mysterious Moai statues found there, but there's another mystery connected with Rapa Nui that isn't as well known. A series of glyphs known as Rango Rango was first documented by Catholic missionaries in the 19th century. It might represent a writing or proto-writing system, but that has yet to be definitively proven. Rango Rango texts and letter codes are inscribed on 24 wooden objects, most of them oblong tablets. The glyphs are written left to right and bottom to top. No direct dating has been done, but experts theorize the tablets were created no earlier than the 13th century. Several attempts have been made to decipher Rango Rango, but only a portion of one tablet was shown to be connected with a Rapa Nui lunar calendar. Apart from that, all efforts to understand the writings have failed. Some experts say that if Rango Rango is verified as writing, it would be one of the rare times in human history that such a system was invented independently. Pet cemetery. Until the 14th century, the Chiribaya culture flourished in Peru. They lived in the Atacama Desert near the Pacific Ocean and predated the Inca Empire. There's even evidence suggesting that the earliest inhabitants arrived in the area prior to 7000 BC. That would coincide with the timeline of other indigenous people who practiced mummification thousands of years earlier than the Egyptians. That practice was evidently adopted by the Chiribaya culture. In 2006, archaeologists were excavating a 1,000-year-old cemetery where they found dozens of non-human specimens. 43 dogs had been interred in separate plots, all of them mummified and buried with food and blankets. Researchers say the animals were valued pets used for herding llamas. Since the desert climate preserved the dogs' remains so well, it was noted that they strongly resembled a modern breed found in southern Peru. DNA research was conducted to see if the ancient animals might be their ancestors, but the results are so far inconclusive. Lost Mayan city possibly found. In 2016, William Gadory, a 15-year-old student from Quebec, may have found something that's eluded archaeologists for centuries: a lost Mayan city in Mexico's Yucatan jungle. A rather complex system was used to compare the positions of known Mayan cities with maps of the stars above. Mr. Gadory found one star that did not align with any particular location. From that information, he theorized that the lost city of Cacchi could be located there. Satellite imagery of the area has revealed what could be interpreted as a series of man-made structures, and that includes a pyramid. However, the find is being disputed and nothing has been confirmed at this point. Takht-i Rostam. Although you wouldn't suspect so, Afghanistan was actually a Buddhist hub for many years before it was a predominantly Islamic state. Although most centers for Buddhist worship have been destroyed, the Takht-i-Rostam remains standing as a relic of Afghanistan's pre-Islamic past. The Takht-i-Rostam is a stupa, or a shrine for Buddhist worship and meditation, but it is distinguished from other stupas by its construction. It is carved into the earth rather than built above it. At its summit is a building that once contained Buddhist artifacts. Around the Takht-i-Rostam, there is a trench where monks used to surround the building. Inside this trench's walls are further meditative areas. Why was this building carved into the ground rather than constructed above it? It could have been for protection. It is harder to invade something that passes by your eyes, but it is more likely that it was done out of necessity, given Afghanistan's climate. While lacking the glamour typically associated with stupas, the fact that this building is carved directly into the ground is compelling all on its own. Göbekli Tepe. Most archaeologists used to think that humanity first settled into cities and then built temples around 8000 BC. But in 1994, they discovered the Göbekli Tepe in the Turkish countryside, and these theories were thrown into disarray. If cities came before temples, then how can we make sense of the Göbekli Tepe, which dates back to before 10,000 BC and seems clearly to be a place of worship? The tepe contains gigantic pillars of stone, into which are carved depictions of animals. Some researchers suggest that ancient peoples would likely have taken this location as a place of relaxation and chosen it, due to its relatively easygoing climate, to be the world's first cathedral. Its discoverer, Klaus Schmidt, also suggests that it could have been an important location to venerate the deceased, and that the animal carvings might have been intended as protection for the dead. However, those who built the Göbekli Tepe would have to have been nomadic hunters. Agriculture arrived onto humanity's scene 500 years later. This suggests that temples might have come before cities and not the other way around, a truly radical reconceptualization of the history of humanity. The Copper Scroll Treasure. At the site of Khirbet Qumran near the West Bank, archaeologists found the Dead Sea Scrolls 70 years ago. These scrolls are important due to their biblical significance and contain information critical to our understanding of the history of Judaism. However, even if you are not religious, you may want to pay attention. One of the scrolls, referred to as the Copper Scroll, has instructions leading to the location of secret treasure. The scroll chronicles the treasure in interesting ways. If you go looking for this treasure, you may find 77 tables of gold, and their gold was from the walls of the Garden of Eden, and they radiated like the radiance of the sun and moon. Most people think that the treasure described by this scroll was that of the Second Jewish Temple. However, there are other theories. It could have belonged to the Qumran Society, or to the First Temple, or to no one at all. Maybe it was a hoax all along, and indeed, no one has located the treasure described in the Copper Scroll. However, if it's still out there, then whoever finds it is pretty lucky. The Copper Scroll. The Copper Scroll is another one of the mysteries that came out of the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. But this Copper Scroll is a bit more mysterious, and it's a mystery that archaeologists are desperate to solve. It was found in the site of Qumran in 1952, and researchers believe the Copper Scroll could actually describe hidden gold and silver that would be enough to make any single person very, very rich. The only issue is that nobody really knows if there is a treasure at all. The Copper Scroll dates back 2,000 years to a part of history when the Roman Empire controlled what is now the West Bank and the Palestinian territory. So far as the legend goes, the Copper Scroll gives details on how to find a treasure that was hidden by the locals to keep it away from the Romans. The Copper Scroll was so old that it was unable to be uncurled properly, and so it was cut into 3 strips and then pieced back together. The scroll gives directions to 64 separate locations where an amazing quantity of treasure is supposed to be found. If the scroll is to be believed, the total amount of treasure would be over $1 billion. However, the directions on the scroll are so obscure and confusing that not a single one of the treasures has yet been found. Now, this may be the greatest treasure hunt in the world today. Would you go after it? It seems dangerous, partially because the treasure is likely hidden far away from civilization, and partially because even if you do find it, how are you going to get it out of there without alerting other people? Poachers and thieves are everywhere, and you could get robbed. What do you think? Is it worth searching for? Let me know in the comment section. Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark is one of those biblical artifacts that everyone really wants to find. Like the Ark of the Covenant and other larger-than-life artifacts from the Bible, Noah's Ark would be indisputable proof for creationists all over the world that the Bible story about the Great Flood really did happen. And while many people dismiss Noah's Ark as ridiculous fantasy, it may have been found in a remote mountain range in eastern Turkey. In fact, according to an article by The Sun, experts claim they found proof Noah's Ark is buried underneath a mountain. Underground photos taken by a film crew have revealed a formation beneath the rock that looks an awful lot like a giant boat. They claim the images taken are 100% of Noah's Ark. However, no concrete evidence has been found. Even if it is a boat buried under the mountain, there is no proof that it is the legendary Noah's Ark. It is an awfully strange coincidence though, considering the area the photos were taken is the exact area described in the book of Genesis where the Ark came to rest after the Great Flood. It seems like a wealthy person should fund an excavation project to figure out if this is real or not. If it is, it would be one of the greatest archaeological finds in history. Agar-Im. That name translates as standing or worshipping stones, and refers to a location on the southwest coast or Malta that overlooks the Mediterranean Sea. The megalithic temples rank as one of the world's oldest religious sites. The complex consists of a main temple and 3 megalithic structures whose construction might predate 3600 BC. Some of the stones used for building the complex measure 23 feet by 10 feet, 7 by 3 meters, and weigh more than 44,000 pounds, 20 metric tons. That brings up the question of who exactly built this place. Researchers say there's little evidence to suggest there was a local civilization advanced enough to build the temples. Since the stones are aligned with the summer solstice, the temples may have served an astronomical function. Other evidence suggests the buildings may have been used as an oracle. Even though the temples have been around for a long time, the ruins weren't initially explored and excavated until the 1840s. Nabta Playa. The Nubian Desert is described as an eastern region of the Sahara Desert. Located deep within the wasteland are numerous archaeological sites, the oldest of which has been dated to around 7500 BC. An ancient stone circle discovered there in the 1970s has evoked comparisons to the far better known Stonehenge, but the similarities go beyond a general appearance. The alignment of the stone suggests that the circle may have been used for astronomical calculations, not unlike Stonehenge. Some sources speculate that it may even represent a star map. If so, it might indicate the first stages of ancient Egyptian astronomy. It also indicates evidence of a society that was not previously documented in ancient Egypt. Whoever they were, they possessed an extraordinary understanding of astronomy and may have been one of the earliest Egyptian civilizations. Unfortunately, their identity may remain a mystery. The harsh desert climate might prohibit further excavation of the area. Metal hand and fingers. In September of 2018, Swiss archaeologists announced the discovery of a 3,500-year-old metal hand made from over a pound of bronze. It's the earliest known metal representation of a human body part ever found in Europe. Treasure hunters originally discovered it using metal detectors in 2017 near Lake Biel in the western province of Bern, Switzerland. They got quite the surprise as they dug through the dirt and found some bones as well. That was a 3,500-year-old burial site. The metal detector hobbyists did the responsible thing and turned it into authorities along with a nearby bronze dagger and rib bone. The piece is equipped with a socket that enabled it to be mounted on a pole or stick, along with a gold foil cuff glued around the wrist. At first, archaeologists were skeptical. Andrea Scheer, head of the Ancient History and Roman Archaeology Department at the Bern Archaeological Service, told National Geographic, "We weren't sure if it was authentic or not, or even what it was." Their suspicions were disproven after radiocarbon dating showed that the glue used to attach the gold foil dates back to between 1400 and 1500 BC, during the Bronze Age. Did you know that they had glue in the Bronze Age? The treasure hunters led experts back to where they made the magnificent discovery. There, archaeologists uncovered the badly damaged grave of a middle-aged man, containing more bones, a bronze hair tie, and gold foil fragments similar to those found on the artificial hand. Considering the rarity of metal objects in Bronze Age burials, as well as the scarcity of gold in such graves throughout Switzerland, the find was undoubtedly unique. Researchers are unsure exactly what the hand was used for or how it was used. The Holy Jar. This jar is full of holes, which doesn't sound impressive at first, but it certainly looks bizarre and it has left researchers scratching their heads. There have been countless jars uncovered from countless sites all over the world, but this is definitely one of the strangest. The jar was recovered from a bomb crater just outside of London after the Second World War in a part of England that dates all the way back to when Britain had been under Roman rule. This is from about AD 43 to 410. But why would anyone need a jar full of holes? The answer is a little strange. The best guess that researchers can make is that the holy jar is a fancy animal cage that would have likely housed either mice or snakes. However, these are just guesses. Nobody actually knows what the jar full of holes was used for. Maybe it was just some fancy decoration in some fancy Roman aristocrat's house. Currently, the bizarre vessel is being displayed at the Museum of Ontario Archaeology in Canada. Cat Shabib. Cat Shabib is an incredible wonder that almost nobody has ever heard of. You would think that a stone wall through the middle of nowhere that was 93 miles, 150 kilometers long, would have gotten a bit more attention. Also, you would think that such a long wall would hold some interesting purpose. However, that is not the case for Cat Shabib, according to Live Science, that is. This is a super mysterious wall that was first discovered in 1948 in the middle of Jordan, which is a country that holds many other interesting archaeological mysteries. But even to this day, researchers still aren't sure why the wall was built, even when it was built, or which civilization built it. The wall appears to run north to south, and in some places has sections where two walls run parallel to each other. There are also sections where the wall branches off and where towers were built, but nobody is really sure why. Today, the wall is nothing but a ruin. Researchers believe it would have stood about 3.5 feet, 1 meter tall in its prime. Because of its short height, it's seriously doubtful that anyone used the wall to keep out invading armies, as their horses could just jump over it. But it could have been used to keep goats away from agriculture or something similar. The best hypothesis is that this bizarre and extremely long wall was used as a boundary between ancient farmlands and ancient pastures of the nomadic farmers. They didn't have barbed wire fences, so this was the next best thing in prehistoric Jordan. Royal Palace of the Dark Ages. Closely linked to the legend of King Arthur, this archaeological site in Tintagel, Cornwall, has uncovered the remains of a potential Dark Age royal palace. The palace is thought to have been home to 6th century rulers of Dumnonia, an ancient southwest British kingdom. Argument remains to be rife when it comes to whether or not King Arthur ever really existed, but legend says he was conceived at Tintagel, so this discovery is sure to give rise to more debate on the mysterious character. The palace's probably dating of between the 5th and 6th centuries AD fits neatly with the legend of Arthur. The lasting fascination with the medieval legend should bring this site plenty of interest from scholars, historians, and the general public alike. This is the first considerable building to be found from the Dark Ages in Britain, making it an exciting find regardless of its link to King Arthur. Meter-thick walls and slate flag stone floors have already been excavated. Pottery and glass reveal that the building's inhabitants enjoyed wine from Turkey and olive oil from the Greek Aegean, now Tunisia. Fine bowls and plates have been found and thought to be imported from Turkey and North Africa, as well as cups from French-made glass cups. This points to an elite people who may have lived in the palace. Vending machines. You might think it's strange to find this device listed as a mysterious and unusual archaeological find. After all, the first modern vending machines appeared in London during the 1880s. But a coin-operated vending machine was invented some 2,000 years ago in ancient Greece. Hero of Alexandria was a renowned mathematician and engineer credited with developing a device that dispensed holy water in temples. When a coin was inserted, a valve was opened by a lever allowing the liquid to pour out. When the appropriate amount of holy water was dispensed, a counterweight snapped the lever back up and shut off the valve. Among Hero's best-known inventions are the first documented wind-powered machines and steam engines. As for vending machines, the technology was forgotten until it re-emerged in the late 19th century. Early Viking settlements. If you still believe that Christopher Columbus was the first to discover, quote-unquote, the New World, this story should help reassess that notion. L'Anse-aux-Meadows is an archaeological site on the Canadian island of Newfoundland. In the 1960s, researchers found the ruins of at least 8 buildings. The similarities between structures and artifacts found here bore strong similarities to comparable sites in Iceland and Greenland that date to about 1000 AD. L'Anse-aux-Meadows was later confirmed as the only Norse or Viking settlement in North America outside of Greenland. In 1978, UNESCO named it as a World Heritage Site. Predating Columbus by more than 5 centuries, it represents the farthest known point of European exploration and settlement of the New World. Additional locations have also been found in the region that may represent other outposts constructed by the Vikings. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Would you like to learn about more remarkable undersea discoveries? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe. I'll see you next time.